Chapter 19. June 22nd, 2033. Seattle, Washington, USA. 70th floor, Illini Building. Negative 59 degrees Fahrenheit. 0800 hours. Larry had left the office shortly after me, carrying the knife. He had taken the sheath as well and thoroughly washed them both. We discussed a few things, including doubling up on watch duty to ensure nobody was alone. Orders were quietly handed down to the next expedition crew to bring weapons back from the store. They didn't disappoint, returning with a wide variety of knives and hand axes, and even managed to secure a couple firearms with ammo. Larry carefully and quietly stashed the weapons in the storage room and issued them to watch personnel. He gave me the rest of the day off, though I wasn't sure why. I spent it with Linda and Eddie, then crashed as normal. I woke at 0800 as my watch was set. Linda was snuggled against my side, still quietly sleeping. A day or two back, I had asked if she wanted to leave her tent to Eddie and move into mine. She had quietly agreed, blush creeping up her cheeks. I had laughed and pulled her into a fierce hug. Of course, Eddie had been absolutely over the moon having the tent to himself. He kept saying he was an adult, and we nodded, hiding the occasional laugh and a cough. We did have to tell him to keep the news to himself because not many had tents to themselves. I had addressed him as an equal, impressing him all the more. He had agreed, which relieved us. Privacy was always a major concern of mine. I met up with Larry shortly after breakfast. He looked haggard.
"Hey, Larry, you look tired, man."
"Up all night watching Gino. He's okay, best as I can tell. Jesse's watching him with Brandon now."
I nodded. Brandon was a good choice.
"So, what's the plan for today?"
He grinned at me, a little gleam in his eye, even through the fatigue.
"We make a firing range."
I had been looking around the room, as was my habit. When he said that, however, my attention zeroed in on him.
"Firing range?"
He nodded.
"You saw that last night's run brought back some shotguns and even a few pistols. We're going to make a firing range a few floors down to prevent the sound from bothering anybody."
"I'm in. What floor?"
He chuckled. It sounded more like distant thunder than actual laughter.
"I figured. Scouts say 65 is clear of windows and debris. We'll set up there."
"Great. Anything else we need?"
"Grab a few targets from the other office. We'll head down to 65 with a few people. I'm going to get anybody interested certified. Watch personnel get priority."
I nodded, then made the rounds while he caught a 10-minute power nap. 15 minutes after our conversation, Larry met our ragtag group in the lobby. We each held a computer case or something similar. He nodded in satisfaction and led the way. The door to 65 creaked open. Larry led the way in, flashlight illuminating the space. Every window had been busted out. Most of the furniture had either caught on the window spars or been blown into the streets far below. A few chairs and cubicle walls were all that remained. The 6 of us pulled the furniture back in, staging it in an arc around the open space. Our targets were then placed among the furniture. Some were placed on chairs or behind them, on walls or even in the open. Larry went first, using a handgun. He talked us through safety and gun etiquette, even though most of us were veterans. We rolled our eyes, but let him do his talk. The wind had mostly died by that point, so it wasn't hard to hear him. The room was open to the elements, so ice was everywhere. The air was absolutely freezing, forcing us to spend no more time down there than necessary. The strangest part of firing our guns wasn't the flash or the whine of the bullets arcing into the darkness far beyond the building. Most of us were used to that from our time in the military. It was the perfectly clear echo of the gun firing. The whole of the situation was surreal. Gunfire inside a quiet, dead city. Glass could be heard breaking from hundreds of feet away. Eventually, it became a game to listen for breaking windows elsewhere in the city when a bullet carried too far. Larry looked on disapprovingly, but held his silence. It was another way to break the monotony of a life focused on survival. 3 hours passed, and by the end, all 6 of us had passed to Larry's satisfaction. We returned to our sanctuary above. Every trip to the store was instructed to bring guns or ammo if they could fit it in. Little by little, the collection in the storage room grew. Larry ordered that any personnel assigned to the lobby have weapons at all times. Initially, there were only 7 of us that were trusted with weapons, which meant we would be working lobby every day. Someone raised a concern over the trips to the store going unarmed. Larry made sure someone was armed and trained with every group thereafter. The rotation was changed to have 2 people in the lobby at all times. To alleviate the increased workload, he volunteered to rotate through all 3 shifts to give us 1 day off a week. I argued against him doing that, saying it would make him work 7 days a week. In the end, he accepted my offer to rotate a day off with me. I took the first armed shift in the lobby, thankful for my heavy winter clothing. I now roamed the lobby and empty office for 8 hours every day, only rarely poking my head into our sanctuary for a warm bite of food. Boredom was a real concern, but spending that first day with a partner made it significantly easier. I mentioned that we should have the lobby team with 2 people from the beginning. Larry grunted in agreement. The next few days passed quickly. Gino was given a clean bill of health, even if he was still muddled about the events of the attack and what came after. He quickly rejoined the group, although he wasn't allowed near any weapons for fear of a relapse. The incident had another unfortunate effect. All watch personnel were barred from drinking, even in off hours. But Larry was right. We had to be ready at a moment's notice. Within a few days, we had 12 people certified by Larry. But it wasn't all sunshine and roses. They were training to become weapons, and they were needed. Even in a dead world, something out there was taking people. It put me on edge, even more so than the occasional mosquito-like whine at the limits of my hearing. Stress was building and nothing seemed to help. Even Eddie noticed my mood souring. He stopped asking me to help him build Lego sets. I was hounded constantly by the feeling that something was building. 14 days after the world ended, everything changed once again. It was a Monday by the old calendar. People were getting stir-crazy. Our world had shrunk to the office. Everything beyond was dead. I could remember the flashing lights in the building across the way, but we hadn't seen anything to indicate life beyond our walls for some time. And yet,